There was no career path or any idea what I was going to do until I sort of got to around 16, 17, and then I started to get to a level where I had an understanding about travelling to tournaments and about taking things more seriously as a professional. Around that time it would have been the likes of the British guys, Nick Matthews, Willstrop was obviously at the top at the time. I always liked those players like your Pete Nichols, David Palmers, who were those tough physical competitors. That was what excited me when I watched the sport when I was young. I just wanted to see people moving at a fast pace, being hard to beat, and it was the athleticism that drew me to the sport. Obviously I loved watching Rami and players like that growing up, but sort of a lot more likely to be replicated by myself was more of a physical brand. So we had such a busy 2 years after sort of the COVID stop. We had 6 months out, and then every tournament we didn't have an off season during that time, and I trained through, and then towards the back end of that 2 year cycle we had Commonwealths. So that was sort of the biggest, without a doubt, the hardest physical push I've had in my career, where the build up to that I couldn't have been in better shape going into that, and I set aside 6 weeks going in, and I worked really hard, and then obviously that was a huge event, and then the season started. 10 days later we had to go away to the first tournament, and I started struggling with, I had a virus I couldn't get rid of that turned into a fatigue issue that carried on for a few months, but I sort of just wanted to carry on with it. I know I've seen a lot of players and athletes around the sport and in different sports justifying losses, making excuses, and that's not something I ever want to be identified with. So I sort of got on with it through the first part of the season, got my head down and did as well as I could with whatever issues I had, and then starting back in January I was able to actually put in the sort of training work that I would consider necessary to be at the top of the game, and my body was healthy enough where I started to respond again. So I'm enjoying playing. I like being able to move in the way I want to, and that enables my squash to come through in the way I want. So when I'm moving well and I'm confident in what I can do, then I know I can beat these guys. I've shown that time and time again, as long as I'm in a good place, and I feel like I'm back where my body was before, and yeah, I found a good place. World No.1, world champion, Commonwealth champion. Everything in the sport. I mean, like I said, I've trained hard for years now, and I've really dedicated a huge amount of a lot of my time over the years, and there's been a lot of sacrifices gone into it. So at this point I still, I've achieved some things that I wanted to. When I just started out I'd have been very happy with that, but your goals keep going higher and higher, and I want to see what I can do. I still think there's levels to my squash that I can go up and achieve a lot more than I have done already. So I want to try and get to the top of the rankings. I want to win major tournaments, but the biggest thing for me is I just want to maximise what I've got. There's some guys who've got so much ability and so much talent with the racket that I've never had, but I just want to reach what the best, the upper limits of what I've got. If my limit is there, I want to hit it. If that means I can't get any higher than 3 in the world, then let's at least get that before finishing. And just sort of not finishing thinking, if I'd have given up a bit more, or if I'd have sacrificed this, or if I'd have worked harder in this way, I could have done it. I want to leave, no stone left unturned, really. I'm a big MMA fan, so that's like what. Outside of squash, I probably follow more of that than squash at this point. I've sort of, that's definitely what I'll get into when I've got a bit more time. I do a good amount of boxing now, but it's just so disrupted with being away for tournaments all the time. I'd like to, that's definitely what I follow and what I enjoy watching a lot of, the way they're a business, the way they sell themselves, and I think we could learn a lot. Doesn't have to be like that, but I think we can learn in the way that the athletes present themselves, the way they come across. The sports coverage, the interviews, the podcasts, I think they're allowed to have a bit more character, and they're allowed to show a bit more of who they are as athletes, and I think that's what squash is in desperate need for, in my opinion. A bit more characters and players allowed to come across in the way that they want to. So yeah, I enjoy that, and I enjoy just how intense and how physical that sport is. We talk about how physically hard squash is, but psychologically going into those kind of sports is just a different level. So that's what I'll be watching a lot of and getting involved in.